who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing. This is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hello, I'm Fenton Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder, and joining me is WOW's Chief Creative Officer, Kitty Girl Tom Campbell.
Kitty Girl. I like that.
And former club kid turned Netflix addict, James.
Dare you! Last week I did 2 Hulus.
We're going to you live from the heart of Hollywood at World of Wonder headquarters. We're surviving like deluge, like rains, floods. But we thought we'd do something different this week. You know, normally we count down the top 10 things that make us go, wow. This week, we're going to count down the top 10 events. Where were we then? Yeah. So they made us go, wow, but we're going to draw on our memories and remember what made us about them, what it was about them that made us go,
was
wow.
Kind of inspired by a Christmas party I attended at HBO years ago, where it was a whole bunch of people that worked together. And we said, where were you Christmas 5 years ago? Where were you Christmas 10 years ago? And it kind of reveals our past in a very interesting way. It might be a Netflix series. This might be a Netflix series.
But it's that sort of thing, like, you know, where were you when JFK died? Like there are certain events that happen in history that you know exactly. The minute you say it, you know exactly
where
we're
counting down here.
Well, exactly. Number 10. Let's start with
number 10.
Where were you when Princess Diana tragically died in the tunnel in Paris?
Oh, yeah.
What was the date? Do you have the date?
August 31st, 1997.
I can start, but please jump in.
Yeah.
I was just starting. We were 1 month on the air with The View with Barbara Walters' first season original cast. And ratings were okay, but it was catching on. It was a new thing. And I was living in New York, but I still had my place in LA. I came back because it was Labor Day weekend. I was at my friend Barry Posnick, who now is a very big executive at MGM, up at his house having dinner. And it was LA time. It felt like 7 p.m.-ish or say, all of a sudden, look, and it was, I do remember, you could not believe it. It did not make sense. And up to that point, Princess Diana meant, I knew about her. We couldn't help but know about her. But she never impressed me as the most important person in history.
What?
How dare you?
Who are you? What is this?
But in her passing, it was just the myth of her, the beauty of her, the young motherness of her. It was so upsetting.
And that she was so young. She really was. You forget how young she was. She is the age of William now.
I mean, look, at the time, she was somewhat on the outs with the public and the royal family. Like, she was getting a reputation of being slightly crazy, slightly unhinged.
But she was coming out of that, and she was coming into her own fashion-wise and beauty-wise, and she had her relationship with Dodie. Keep going. I'm sorry.
But
was
that
in
night,
France.
You were in France.
We were 8 hours ahead, 9 hours actually. So I was staying at my mum and dad's house, and my mum came in like 7, 8 in the morning. Darling, brought me a cup of tea. Oh, I miss my mum. I wish she was still around. She brought me a cup of tea and said, "Oh, Lady Di's been hurt in a car crash."
Yes,
because she wasn't. That's
the
dead.
thing.
Like, yes,
because I was driving up from Mexico, from Tijuana.
What did you have up your butt?
I was muling some.
Build that wall. Build that wall.
But I remember we would hit San Diego, and we heard that she'd been in a car accident,
right.
And then we hit we got to where's the swallow, San Juan Capistrano, and all of a sudden we heard that she might be brain damaged, and then by the time we got to Riverside, that she was irreparably brain damaged, and then she had died. Like every couple miles, we kept hearing something else about it, and it was very upsetting.
The very next day, I went to London. So I actually was going by train, changed train stations in Paris, literally went right past the site where it happened.
Wow.
Get to London, and I can tell you, I've never experienced, I get chills just thinking about it. I've never experienced in my life a collective sense of sadness and emotion. And it was an extraordinary weather because there was sort of a fog, and it wasn't like a fog, it was like drizzle. It was like a
mist.
Fog, yes. And everybody was hanging around Buckingham Palace and in St. James's Park, and the flowers were just everywhere.
I remember that was the beginning of those walls of flowers.
Enormous amounts of flowers, and people were just wandering around in a daze. And the whole thing was, it was not like a horror film, but it was very haunting and spooky because there was this sort of drizzly mist and there was this sort of hush.
When the weather matches the mood, it's really intense.
It was incredibly
just
intense.
that feeling of being dazed and just like you've been you've been hit on the head, that same feeling of after 9/11 where the whole city is just wandering around in a daze.
And it's of course silly because we're all mortal, but it seemed an impossible ending to her life.
Yeah.
It seemed so.
But on the other hand, it seemed the perfect ending to her life, because how could it have ended any other way? She was a tragic figure from the get-go, and it was going to end tragically.
And my footnote is, so clearly, even though I wasn't up to speed with Diana thing, I realized that the world it felt like a shift in the world. Everyone was mourning. Everyone felt it.
It was the beginning of a new era.
And we had done we were a live show, The View, and for Monday, because we were off for the weekend, we had pre-taped a show starring Tom Arnold, and that was going to be airing. If you remember, the TV coverage became wall to wall Princess Diana, and I called up the executive producer Bill Getty and Pat Philly, my boss. I was like, we have to be on the air Monday. This because we were trying to find things that America wanted to talk about. I'm like, oh my God, this is huge. We need to do our own condolences book. We need to pass it along. I'm an evil TV producer, but and they were all like, no, everyone's on vacation. We can't get them back. Well, Monday they ran the Tom Arnold show and it did okay. Tuesday they went live on the air. Barbara Walters showed up at the table because she had many encounters and friendship.
They were very close
with
friends,
Princess
I'm
Diana,
sure.
and she brought stationery with Princess Diana's things. It is ironically the moment that The View jumped a quantum leap in ratings because everyone wanted to be in on that conversation.
Not only did Lady Di save The View, she also saved the royal family. Because remember, for days the royal family remained holed up at Balmoral, their retreat in Scotland, and they didn't come out. But then they finally came out, and I think it completely saved the monarchy. I think the monarchy was
a whole
this sort
movie
of,
about that.
Yes, fabulous movie by the guy who wrote The Crown. What's his name? I don't know. We can't remember.
That's the trivia question for next week.
There we go. All right, let's move on.
Number 8.
9. It's catchy. It's a virus. Okay.
Number 9.
Number 9, this is something that I personally really meant something to me, and it probably doesn't mean anything to you, so I want to tell you this story right here. Do you guys remember the scandal of Roxanne Pulitzer in 1982?
The name sounds familiar.
I know the name. Is there a famous picture of her in a fur coat and a hat or something?
No, you're thinking of Rita Jenrette, who posed naked on the steps of the Washington Monument.
Okay, I'm wrong.
Foxy Roxy, as she was known, was she married into the Pulitzer family, and this is in Palm Beach, and she was one of the first great scandal queens of the 80s. You have Fawn Hall, you have Donna Rice, you have Jessica Hahn. Roxanne was 1982. She sort of was a precursor to all of that. She was married to Peter Pulitzer of Palm Beach, and in Palm Beach is a very stuffy, old money, very high society city. And they were sort of the golden couple of the time. And he was a rakish sort of adventurer, and this was his third wife. She had been a cheerleader, and he found her and married her, and that sort of raised her into society. But she was always a little sort of hotsy-totsy.
Good for her.
And in Florida, growing up in South Florida, what happened in Fort Lauderdale and in Palm Beach and Miami was like the Tri-Cities, and we all sort of knew what was going on and everything like that. So this was like a local story that started hitting national. When they got divorced, first of all, it was really lurid headlines about how they were having, she was having a lesbian affair with Jackie Kimberly of the Kimberly-Clark toilet paper fortune.
Okay, you know these things.
Right? I mean, huge
Big
deal.
money.
Big money. The Fruit Loop fortune. The Huggies diaper fortune. You know how it is. But so she was having this lesbian affair, and then they were having orgies with this race car driver. That was a big deal. And then
Sounds so good.
Every single day it was like these cocaine-fueled orgies, and it was just kept getting more and more lurid. Then it turns out they were having seances during these coke-fueled orgies and having sex with the spirits. And the headlines just kept getting crazier and crazier and crazier.
That takes me out a little bit. The seance would kind of make me
that's just it.
get online and look for somebody else to come over.
What is going on? This is like
How do you have sex with a spirit?
Well, this is where it gets even crazier because there was a famous. This is a New York Post headline, and this is the where was I then? Because I was 14 years old in my kitchen in Fort Lauderdale with my sisters, and we're looking at the headlines, and it's on TV at the same time. We're just inundated with it, and the headline is Roxanne Pulitzer : I slept with a trumpet. What does that even mean? mean? Which was like the craziest thing ever. Like, she's had sex with a trumpet, and so afterwards she became known.
Maybe left the S off, it's like strumpet.
No. That's just it. Then she became known as the strumpet with a trumpet. That was Foxy Roxy, the strumpet with a trumpet. Well, I remember my stepmother came into the room and she said, "Bob," my husband, to her dad. She said, "Bob, I don't think the children should be reading the news." And like we were whisked out of the house and we were put into a news blackout for the next week because we weren't. It was just too scandalous for the kids to see because I had sex with a trumpet. And I was like vibrating. I was like, "What is this? What was going on?"
Did you go out and blow your horn?
I was so like, this is like, it was like an opening to me. It was like the first scandal queen that I really like connected with, right? Because she was so fabulous. We'll cut to 1989, and here I am with Roxanne Pulitzer and the Copa.
She looks great.
She was fabulous.
Not as beautiful as James.
Well, yeah. But she and I became like friends, and I ended up doing an interview with her, and I ended up.
Where is she now?
Well, the sad thing is, she lost the children. They lost the rights to her children.
Oh my God.
And she was only given $48,000 out of all these millions. So she went broke, and she ended up writing a book about it, and then she ended up writing a couple of novels, thinly veiled novels about it. She never regained custody of her children. She's still around.
She gives trumpet lessons.
She was banished to West Palm Beach, which
Is that how you learn to play the skin flute?
but West Palm Beach is like for where yoga instructors live. I mean, like nobody like that. You might as well be in Outer Mongolia. So it was.
So where were you when the strumpet with the trumpet headline? Is that what we're?
That is.
And what was the date of that?
It was obviously
But
formative.
here's this is the interesting thing, though. You cannot find this headline anywhere on the internet because the Pulitzers are so powerful that they've had it scrubbed. So you cannot find it. Has
This
been
would
completely
make such
taken.
a great TV movie or like a movie.
It is. It's a fascinating story, and
I have no recollection.
She was really, really something, and she was just very formative in my youth, and she helped me become the person I was.
Get a hold of her.
It says here that Roxanne is currently married to Timothy S. Boberg and resides in Palm Beach, Florida.
Well, interestingly enough, then she, her husband, it was going broke, and she ended up bailing out her ex-husband because she ended up having more money than him in the end.
Well, that's not much. Okay. James, where were you? Moving on to number 8.
Number 8.
September 9th, 2007. What date do you think this is? I know it matters to you a lot. It was Britney. Britney was on the VMAs.
Yeah.
And she did more.
Gimme
Well,
more.
it was an epic moment. I remember exactly where I was.
Why does this speak to
I
you?
was at home with Billy and Nolan. And Nolan had been home maybe 6 months. He was like less than a year old. But when Britney came on, and this is why I think I know he's straight, he was completely transfixed. I mean, he was just playing around with bricks and things.
Why does that? No, wouldn't that make him gay? Wouldn't he like? Wouldn't it be a little gay that would go bananas for Britney?
But she was wearing like hot pants. My recollection, she wasn't wearing very much. She's looking very sensual. And of course, the big story around that was like how awful she was, how badly she performed, how everybody was laughing at her. But I always thought the song was just amazing, and I didn't really care that she was sort of.
But let's
just
remember that summer, I believe, or that spring is when she shaved her head on Sunset. I'm just remembering.
No,
and this was supposed to be her big comeback, and all this pressure was on her and all her eyes, and she had started like every MTV Video Music Awards, the past, the Snake. She always did like a spectacular performance, and we were all there. I agree with your outcome. And she came out in those booty shorts. She was not heavy, but she looked a little Zoftic, a little thick for Britney from what she had been. I don't know, Zoftic.
I love that word. That's
she
good.
seemed like she was kind of waiting to save it for like the real performance.
She was slightly behind the beat.
It was like a walkthrough.
Yes.
But I
before.
loved it as a kind of I don't give a fuck sort of performance. I loved it.
And her it looked like you could see her extensions, her tracks and stuff.
It wasn't the greatest.
Tell us, Ed,
Edward's
super
here.
fan.
I
please.
really picked this one really for Edward to talk about where
were
he
you?
was.
So I was actually in Vegas at the Rain Hotel or the Palms Hotel where it was playing.
Yeah.
And I was watching it from Rain nightclub with a friend because she was working at MTV at the time. and we got
Excuse me a second, stalker. Go on.
well, yeah, that's why I went, because Britney was there. And they played it, and I just remember the whole crowd just went silent. No one was just like, everyone was just like, oh my God. And then it was over, and I looked at my friend. I said, "We have to go home," and we just packed up and went back to LA. I was
just ran.
The party was over.
Get out of Vegas.
It was like the night that Trump was elected.
Yeah, that was
Democrat.
It was over for me. I was like, everyone was so excited.
I also thought it was unkind of MTV because I think they knew she wasn't up to perform, and I thought it was the first of what I consider several sort of
gotcha
moments that they used to stoke ratings.
Maybe, and also,
controversy.
it was just the idea that they had, they were trying to, that quick resurrection. Even her team, who've done an amazing job with her, and she has repaired her reputation, and she's Hella Vegas stuff. But I do remember that it was a shock. It was Perez Hilton was around. It was not the beginning of the internet, but it was a time when something spread virally, right? It was like, ooh, this is bad, boom, like we'd never seen before. And yet, as a result, everyone would watch to make fun of a little bit at World of Wonder, a quieter World of Wonder a few years ago. And by the noon the next day, everyone loved that song because it's the greatest song. And this kept playing. You're just like, it's good. And it is like, why make a video when you can make a crazy, viral, mad, bad video that takes over the world?
Well, it's certainly part of that beginning of there's no publicity. Like there is no, well, it's not the beginning of there is no bad publicity, but it certainly was a sort of the viral flip side of like, oh, you think something's a disaster and it actually works out quite well for you in terms of brand dispersal. And also you're quite right. I mean, not only is Gimme More an amazing track, that entire album is a work of genius. James has heard me say this before.
It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Is it really?
Yeah,
or is it just your...
No, it's one of the most albums.
The Bible, Shakespeare's work, Britney's Blackout.
Britney's Blackout. Masterpiece.
I could go on, but maybe we should take a break.
Just a quick one.
Speaking of breaks, Britney is taking one from her Las Vegas residency to be with her sick father. Hope he gets well soon. She's currently recording her 10th studio album. I have a feeling it will be good because I think she was kind of sitting out the last album a little bit, right?
James is so politely quiet.
James gives a polite yawn.
If you have nothing good to say, don't say nothing.
Trumpets, James. Yes. Get caught up on this season of $1 Million Listing LA on the Bravo app. Tune in Thursdays, 9 p.m. So what question have you got for us, Edward?
Well, of course, it's the Britney one, Fenton. Question for you guys. What year did Britney Spears win her first VMA?
Oh.
Okay.
All right. You're listening to the Wow Report on Radio Andy, SiriusXM. We'll be right back with the answer.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James and Eddie standing in for Blake.
Hi.
Hi. So, of course, we were talking about Britney because, that's what we do on this show.
We do.
No, we're doing a special thing this week. We're counting down the top 10 things that make us go, wow. Except it's like events and where the events that made us go, wow.
And where were we
then?
When they happened?
When they made us
Those
go.
Those moments that you can never forget.
When they made us go, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, it was Britney. That VMA performance, which of course requires a Britney trivia question.
The question was, what year did Britney win her first VMA award?
I'm going to lock in my answer.
I would have to say 98.
I'm going to say 99.
Okay.
I'll say 2000.
Her first VMA award was in 2008, the year after the 2007 VMAs.
Oh, you're kidding?
What
did she do?
She won 3 awards that year, and it was for Piece of Me video.
That's a good one.
And it was like her comeback, kind of MTV brought her back. Remember?
That was the comeback of the comeback.
Right out of the gate with "Hit Me One More Time." And
They never gave her an award until 2008.
I'll be damned.
That's
that
another.
is crazy.
Now you're pro Britney. Now she's an underdog.
I think I won because I'm closest.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
I stopped paying attention after I realized I lost. I didn't think it was important anymore.
7.
Number 7.
Where were you when?
Do you remember where you were June 3rd, 2007? Same year as the Britney thing.
A busy year that year.
And kind of related by paparazzi. It was the day that Paris Hilton went to jail.
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. I do.
really?
I do.
Tell me all about it.
Well, no, I just remember the helicopters and the craziness and the insanity.
I mean, my recollection is correct. We were all here at World of Wonder.
I think so. And I may be confusing when she went to court and when she went to jail, and I don't care because I'm
well, it
old
was
enough.
like the white Bronco chase of our generation.
Yes, because she, first of all, the thing is when she got sentenced, she yelled out, "Mommy!"
Yeah.
And I'm not even laughing; it like killed me.
Oh, heartbreaking.
Poor Paris Hilton, and they are a very close family. We know the whole family. We've met them and liked them.
Can I just interject about the
Please.
mummy moment?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to mention it with Lady Di. The funeral, the most heartbreaking thing I think I've ever seen was the little boys walking behind the coffin, and
yes.
on the coffin was the little flower arrangement and handwritten "Mommy."
Yeah.
It's just like, anyway, don't mean to start.
And now Paris Hilton was mommy. But I was working on World of Wonder, but we were doing a pilot of a dating show that would end up being picked up called Trans-American Love Story. Well, Calpurnia Adams, an incredible, beautiful woman who happens to be trans, was looking for love. And we had to do a pilot. So we shot it, cheap as we could. You had to, no money. And we shot it in the Hollywood Hills in this house that had like a incredible pool and all this outdoor area. So the idea was like, you can't use the inside. That was the deal with the guy. But we were going to have like a rose ceremony and pools and dates and things. And we were up there and we had one day to shoot. You know how it is. You got to do it. And it was like nom. It was the most helicopters. And at some point I was, I had to make the decision. I'm like, just shoot the helicopters because there was so much noise and say that
And we'll cut them in.
because I'm jumping ahead because just a few feet away Paris Hilton's house, and all the helicopters news helicopters were over her house, and we were on TV waiting for it to go, and it was like she's going downtown, so all the helicopters went down. But there was like 2 or 3 hours, and can you again? It was that TMZ Perez Hilton moment where it's like all of humanity stops, and people can't hear themselves think because Paris Hilton is going to jail.
My recollection is being in the conference room, and they passed down the road right outside. They came down Hollywood Boulevard. We were like, woo.
But I mean, there was nobody more in the world more important than Paris Hilton at that point. Paris, Lindsay, and Britney, and Nicole. I mean, they were all. It was like just an incredible moment in celebrity.
So much of their celebrity happened right behind World of Wonder in the parking lot where we park our cars because that's where Ledoux was, and it took me weeks. Working here, months maybe, where I realized, because you'd step over like hair extensions and broken nails and a lost heel, and I realized that all of the shenanigans, all of that, when they weren't wearing underwear and stepping out of cars, so much of it happened right here
in that parking lot
at the World of Wonder.
I remember seeing, going to dinner with you and Randy, and that was when Jennifer and Brad first showed up together the first time we saw them in public.
What?
Yeah, they were sitting at the table next to us. And I was going out of I was going absolutely out of my mind, and you and Randy couldn't care less. And I was like, "This is the beginning of something big," and it turned out to be something huge.
Clearly, Fenton still doesn't care.
I can't believe I've been that close to Brad Pitt. Anyway, okay, moving on. Number 6.
Number 6.
Where were you when?
What is my number 6?
I'll give you a clue. November 4th, 2008.
November 4th, 2008. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was here at the World of Wonder Storefront Gallery. We were doing a show called Hollywood DC, the intersection of celebrity and politics. And there were all sorts of paintings there by Shepard Fairey. There was a lot of imagery of Obama, because this was the year that Obama was go up against John McCain and Sarah Palin, and we had a lot of Sarah Palin, things.
There was one picture of Paris Hilton crossing.
I have that in my apartment.
Crossing the Potomac.
Yes.
There was a picture of Heidi Montag, who was our co-host of it, and instead of Hope, it had her holding 2 melons, which was a big picture at the time, and it said Grope.
Yes,
and Steve Kerf did that.
We had the great. It was the Farrah Fawcett paint picture of
Farrah Fawcett poster
with Sarah Palin's face in it, called Sarah Fawcett.
But this must have been a few days then before the election, or was it?
No. We actually had a viewing party to watch the results of the election come in, and we had about 150 people here. And I remember as it kept coming in and it looked better and better for Obama, I remember just everybody started crying, and everybody that feeling of hope that the world was about to change for the better. And I remember remember when it was finally announced that Obama had won, and everybody it was a group hug, and then everybody ran into the streets on Hollywood Boulevard, and everyone on the streets in Hollywood Boulevard were crying and hugging each other, and there were firecrackers and sparklers, and people were going absolutely bananas, and we didn't realize then that it was actually probably the beginning of
every action has a reaction.
Yeah.
And with all of that change comes a lot of resistance. And now we know.
Actually, we thought it was the end of racism, and it was actually the blowback from it was actually greater than anything we've ever seen before. So we at the time we thought that that things were going to be better, but actually it was what ended up bringing Trump in.
Well, it's funny because I remember seeing Obama walk out onto the stage that night to give his acceptance speech. I thought, wow, he looks like he's aged 20 years, like literally
but they were
within
such
5
a
minutes.
handsome family. They were so beautiful, and you
That
couldn't.
great picture of them.
Yes, and the kids and her outfits and Michelle. You couldn't love them more.
It was a fairy tale come true.
And they were so beautiful, and just it was like I imagine when Jack and Jacqueline
and John JFK.
Took
it really does speak to just what positive messaging, not forgetting about who he is for a minute, but just the messaging of hope, of future. Like a lot of people, we forget the same nation and electorate that voted him into office twice, Obama, voted for Trump. So it can happen again.
It can.
But
that feeling of just the warm feeling of everybody just running up to strangers and hugging them and everything. It still was a major sea shift for the nation.
Yeah.
It still is. And again, what we realize now is that and being naive, I guess, or being too optimistic, it's like there's pushback. When you make a change, people push back, forces
it's
push
the
back.
last gasp of a dying breed that are pushing back right now.
Well, here's a fun fact. Barack Obama is one of 3 presidents to win a Grammy. You know that? Yeah. In fact, he has 2 for Best Spoken Word.
I thought he did a duet with Ariana Grande, but that's just me.
That's
Shawn
still a
Mendes.
Thank
the other
you,
two?
Barack.
No, who are the other two?
only
it
does
doesn't
a
say.
certain amount of
I don't
research.
know.
So it doesn't
What
say
is it?
Jimmy
Jimmy
Carter and Bill
I was
Clinton.
going to say Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton.
Does Jimmy
Those
Carter have
guys.
more than one? Or does
I'm not sure.
Idols in the
We'll see.
Stream, I think was.
He just won one. Jimmy Carter just won one.
He
Just
did.
the other day.
He did.
Number 5.
Okay, well, James, after the election of Barack Obama, I have to follow with November 8th, 2016.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was
It was the election of Trump. And this is, for me, this is an extraordinary story in that everyone said it simply wasn't possible that he would be elected. Of course, as it turned out, he wasn't elected. This we know. But however, I was at home getting ready to go on the red eye to New York, and the election results are coming in, and you know how they do it on CNN. They always give you the result that you don't want first. You said to feel
keep you in the game.
So it looks like it's going bad, and he says it's not looking good for Hillary, and I was like, humbug! It's all part of the
the hype.
But
just
you
creating
knew
a
that
narrative.
once Florida went, then you knew that it was
Well,
over.
okay, so I went to the airport way before Florida went, and I was on the plane, and at one point I fell asleep, and at one point I woke up, and it was like, Trump likely to be president. And I thought, this must be a nightmare.
Right.
I just went back
Too much
to
Ambien.
too much Chardonnay. I was like, this is nice. So I get into New York. I get to the hotel. The door of my room is the New York Times. Trump elected. I couldn't believe it. Now, I wish I had been here in the office because I think it was quite a scene. I can tell you, I sat alone in my hotel room the whole day. I couldn't do any meetings. I was just so enraged and sad and but what was it like here, James?
I will tell you something, because first of all, Randy was furious. He stormed out of the office. He kept saying, I knew it, because he'd been calling it for about a week beforehand.
Randy did not know it. Randy told me many times it was an impossibility that Trump would be president.
But I think the day before he sort of had a realization. And I remember Tom Wolfe came out, and I went into the office, into the room where everyone was having a meeting, and I said, you guys, Florida just fell. It's looking like it's going to Trump. And Tom was like, it is not. And he was like angry. He was furious. Like he was completely mad at everybody in the office for saying that it was going to go to Trump. But we all knew at that point that it was.
I remember voting in the morning, the sticker shot. I remember coming into World of Wonder. Rue happened to drop by.
I remember saying to Rue, "Happy Hillary Day." Happy Hillary
and
Day.
we were all kind of. And I said, you know what? I said to Rue, I studied Nazism in college, and I never, even though I understood it intellectually, I never understood that angry man Hitler, those awful long speeches, all that, like how anyone could find that attractive. And I said, now I kind of do, but thank God we voted for Hillary and she's going to win. That feeling. Went home. I was flying to New York the next day, not the red eye, and I fell asleep. I don't remember. I fell asleep, and it was very touch and go, Florida. But like I just couldn't believe it. Went to bed. I had an early, like a 5 o'clock car. You wake up, and he's won.
Yeah.
And I got into a car, and I got on a plane. And kind of when you travel alone, you're kind of silent.
Yes.
And then I landed in New York. And this is the part that killed me. I thought New York was quiet. I thought the streets people were out, but people weren't talking.
You didn't go to work.
It just felt like everyone was in a really bad, shocked mood.
It was the alternate timeline. It was that I talked about last week. We were all we
What did
suddenly
we all do to pick that timeline?
it was the CERN
I'll tell you
laboratories
later.
that did it.
That's my fault.
Where were you, Edward? What were you doing?
I was here in LA. Came back to the office, and I remember it was really silent. Mona, who works with us, came up to ask me a question. I saw like tears in her eyes, so I started
Amber
crying.
was crying.
Yeah, everyone was just like, it was like, oh.
At least you could all cry on each other. I'd sitting alone in a hotel room.
But
Enraged.
I kept hoping really the only time in my life I thought maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe I'm going to wake up and this isn't
you know
real.
What's salutary about this? It was a mistake. We now know there was collusion with Russia. We now know that he didn't. It was an illegitimate
doesn't
election.
matter because they stole the election just like they did in 2000.
Right.
And they
that was
just
another one.
they steal elections.
Yes, they steal.
Gerrymandering and
they let off
They
somehow.
change the rules and then they cheat anyway.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
fuck them. We have to take a quick break.
On that happy note.
Do you have a lovely trivia question to restore our spirits?
Yeah, let's go on the lighter side here.
All right.
What was Britney doing?
No.
Britney
Where
that
was
day.
Paris going when she got pulled over for her DUI? And that made
in
her go to
pink
jail.
Bentley.
Oh, you're listening to the Wow Report on Radio Andy SiriusXM.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. We are counting down the top 10 events that made us go, wow. Wow. And what we remember when we were there. There we were then what? Then where we were.
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Well, yeah.
Anywho, before the break, we were just having a bit of a Trump
Meltdown
moment. Happens every show. But Ed cheered us up with a trivia question, which was...
Where was Paris Hilton going when she got pulled over for her DUI?
I think she was heading the wrong way on the 101 freeway.
I think
No,
that's
that
Nicole
was-
Richie,
that was
and it
Nicole.
was the
Yeah.
134 or something.
Oh.
I'm
debunk you
saying
right here.
she was on her way to. I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm going to say that she wasn't. She was coming from an event and going to In-N-Out Burger.
Tom Campbell's right. Yeah. She got pulled over and told the cop, I had one margarita and I was hungry for a burger, so I'm going to In-N-Out.
Right? I get it. I get you, Paris.
And she went in and out of jail, too.
But one margarita was enough to
I mean, that's what she said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to the
And
cop.
she was holding the cocaine for a friend. All right.
Okay, we've reached number 4.
Number 4.
A television event that changed history and herstory. Ellen DeGeneres, her character Ellen on the Ellen Show on ABC, and came out of the closet.
And it came out on her sitcom.
Yes.
Her eponymous sitcom.
This is a double narrative, isn't it?
Right. Well, there was the "Yep, I'm gay" that
Right.
on Time Magazine,
Yeah.
at which the secret had been leaked or whatever, the story had been positioned, but the actual night of the episode airing when America
the puppy episode.
Yes, thank you very much. I remember because my friend Carolyn Strauss, who happens to be a lesbian and lives in this great neighborhood with all these power lesbians, was having a viewing party. And I said, could I bring my friend Charlie, who was my friend, and she's like, let me check. She got back, yeah, you can bring him. I was just
Why was she checking?
Because
Why
I
was
was
she
breaking
checking?
into a lesbian party, which, come on, they have special rituals. So I had the pleasure of being with these really intelligent directors and women, and we just sat there, and it just felt very historic. still to this day, when there's a man and a man kissing or a woman and a woman kissing in like a natural setting of romance, it's still because we're so hungry for it. We see so little of it, and the way they dealt with it, and the Laura Dern, who looks exactly the same today as she did then, and the leaning in and the microphone. It just
That was a great moment, leaning in the microphone. That was great.
It did change the world.
Why was it? I can't remember why it was called the puppy episode.
Because that was the way they got it past, not past the session. That was their way of like, it's not the coming out, it's not the lesbian episode, it's the puppy episode. Everybody loves puppies. Wasn't that the sort of the reason behind it? Where were you? Do you remember?
I remember I was just watching it at home. I was out here in Los Angeles. I had just moved here. And to me, it's funny because I think I was young enough that it just felt natural. It felt like it was something that should have happened a couple of years earlier.
If anyone wants to read between the lines, James just shaded me for being much older than him. But James can't hear this. Continue. You're so much younger, James. Were you living alone, or did you have a babysitter over? I'm sorry. Keep going.
You were old enough to live on your own?
But I do remember
your bedtime, James.
I remember groups like ACT UP and Michael Musto outing, Rosie O'Donnell and Jodie Foster and Whitney Houston and Ellen DeGeneres, and they had been, trying for many years to get them to come out of the closet, and they all came out one at a time, probably a little later than they should have, is what I felt. And I remember thinking that this was something that was overdue, and I was glad that she was doing it, but it didn't
fit your timetable.
Exactly. She didn't come out on my schedule.
Well, that would have been impossible. But World of Wonder made a documentary called The Real Ellen Story, and it was documenting this whole
just after
process.
This, or during
it was just after it, and it was documenting her relationship with Anne Heche.
Yes.
And they were deeply, madly, crazily in love.
Right.
And we also managed to get onto the set of the final taping of the final episode of Ellen ever.
Wow.
And I remember that Ellen was crushing grapes with her feet. There was some sort of...
Like Lucy.
Yes,
It was
that's
a
what it
Lucy
was. It was, and she
homage.
called everybody together and gave them because I think, James, I absolutely hear you saying it was a little late for you and your schedule, but that at the same time she came out, and then everybody piled on and said the show wasn't funny enough, and that she should stick to being funny and stop being
And
gay.
really,
and there was
we thought it was the end of her career for a minute there.
I think she really went through a profoundly traumatic experience.
Yeah, you're right.
And
The
I
weight
think
of
it
the world.
also sort of, I think also the incredible pressure of all that, I think, I'm not going to say, but I do think it had an impact on their relationship
How could
too.
it not?
Because,
Yeah.
imagine living like that under that microscope with that intense scrutiny and not, frankly, let's be honest, always finding the support from the gay community that you might hope
Well,
you
that's
would
right,
have.
exactly. Me right here, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
James St.
Uh-huh.
James, for
Uh-huh.
one, yes. But I do remember getting to know Ellen and working with her, and I just found her absolutely amazing, just an amazing, lovely person, and super, super intense. Because, it's the old cliche of you think Britney is just, a wanton harlot singing sexy songs, or you think Ellen is just a bundle of laughs every moment. And these people have real lives that aren't always completely in sync with with what they're doing with their
Well,
job.
they're completely human and mortal, and at the same time, they have the crushing power of the world watching and commenting.
They feel things, and it was heartbreaking to watch some of the wanton cruelty, and
But by the same token, I think that was part of the narrative that she needed in order to have the incredible comeback that she did, and the karma that was built up in her favor.
She couldn't be a more beloved public figure today.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Oh, you know what? And I know we've got to wrap it up, but I was like, when I heard she was doing a Tyler Pictures talk show, I thought, well, that's not going to work.
Right.
I just thought it was so weird. And yet, what a brilliant master stroke. What an incredible move. What an amazing second act.
Yeah.
What a fantastic talent.
The second open LGBTQ person to have a talk show after RuPaul.
Whoa, Rosie.
She wasn't out.
She wasn't out. Yeah, that's true.
Out.
Okay,
Don't
moving
get me
on.
started on that.
Well, James, let's get you started on your number 3.
Number 3.
My number 3, June 25th, 2009. I remember it like I was yesterday. Here I was at World of Wonder. It was my second week blogging. I had been doing the gallery downstairs, and then I was brought upstairs to work on the blog. And I really hadn't found my footing yet. And it was every day coming in, and I was in a panic. What am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? When that morning, Farrah Fawcett died. And that was it was crushing. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, this is, this is what we're going to be doing all day. And we were posting the Colgate commercial and pictures from the burning bed and pictures from the Poor Little Rich Girl with the Barbara Hutton story and all of the Charlie's Angels videos and this and that and Logan's Run. And it was just like, I thought the whole week was going to be nothing but Farrah. Well, then the same thing, all of a sudden we heard the news that there was an accident not in Neverland. He was
just at his home. He had a home in the West Side.
It said sort of service has been called. Ambulance been called
ambulance had been called.
Wasn't like
for Michael Jackson.
For Michael Jackson. And you thought, oh, well, this is odd. And then because prior to this, Michael was going to he was gearing up to do this
comeback.
show. The comeback show. He was going to do 30 shows at the O in London. But I remember saying to Steven Sabin, I said, I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I don't think there's any way Michael Jackson can do 30 shows. And I remember thinking, this is not going to end well. And then you heard that there was an accident, and then just like Princess Diana, every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes,
and you don't want to believe it. You don't want to believe it.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. He's not coming out. He's not coming out of the coma. He's not responsive. Blah blah blah. And then he dies. And poor Farrah Fawcett at that moment was just wiped off of the face of we forget how beloved she was, because then all of a sudden the world turned. It was nothing but Michael Jackson from that moment on.
That is that like Andy Warhol. When Andy Warhol was shot, he was upstaged. I think RFK was shot the next day or something.
Yeah, and he didn't get the front page of the New York Times, and he was furious about it.
I remember being here at World of Wonder, hearing the news, thinking again like Princess Diana, this isn't true, it can't be true, and then kind of dealing with it's weird. You're at work, you're dealing with it, and I again was rushing to the airport for a red eye. And I was in my car, and I put on NPR, and they had stopped programming and were just playing what sounded like records of Michael Jackson. They're like, let's listen to this. And you heard the needle hit a record, and you heard scratch, 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 and it was ease on down. Ease on down, bump, come on and ease on down, ease on down the road. And I bawled while I was driving because it just like hit me. And
I remember hearing Ben, Ben, and just those opening chords, and I bawled.
But don't you carry nothing that might be a load, ease on down the road, a passage into the next realm. And also just thinking in that moment, because there's been so much, and it's in the headlines again with this new documentary, but there's, Michael Jackson was such a pure talent and so beloved and such amazing contribution, and yet he may have done these horrible crimes. And in his death, in that moment in my car driving to the airport, you felt like the soul, like the sins of the person, not for the victims, of course, but the sins kind of leave him, and it's just the soul and the music that remains. And I know that's controversial, but
I do think it's fascinating that in his case, his death, for want of a better word, sort of saved his reputation, because there had been these terrible ABC specials, and it was looking worse and worse and worse, and he'd been acquitted, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been 10 years for people to really come back to that story about what was going on. Have you seen the film yet? I have not seen the film, but also like we optioned Victor Gutierrez. Michael Jackson Was My Lover. A book that lays out everything that has subsequently been revealed, and yet that story, I felt that aspect of the story, we weren't really ready to hear it, and even to this day, I think people have a problem hearing about it. And,
it's true.
So just one of those weird things. Okay, Michael Jackson was the highest paid dead celebrity of 2018. God, earning over
more than Marilyn, more than Elvis,
400 million.
Huh?
400 million. Yeah. Okay.
And we want to be interested to see what his number 2 was.
Yes. Edward doesn't reveal that.
You always ask what we don't know, just to make us feel inadequate. Thank you.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2.
What does this date mean to you? June 17th, 1994.
Oh. I'm looking at the paper, so I know. I remember exactly where I was.
Wait, what is it?
It was OJ on the freeway, the great Bronco chase.
Bronco.
I think, so OJ was wanted. He was going to surrender himself that day for the murder of
Nicole Brown Simpson.
Thank you very much. And he didn't show up. And then they were like, where is he? And then the story, I think, gets really extraordinary and interesting and encapsulates everything that was going on in LA at this time, because news helicopters were a thing. And we happen to know a new thing. They would report from the air because they could do freeway chases.
Riots. They had done the LA riots.
And Madonna's wedding. Right. And the fires. I mean, it was almost like a sort of the perfect drug for news was to have a helicopter. And we knew the pioneer of news helicopter reporting, whose name at the time was Bob Turr. In fact, we'd made a film about him in following his coverage of the LA riots, because he was the person who was at the intersection of Florence and Normandy and saw that sparking event after the acquittal of the people in the Rodney King beating. So the cops in the Rodney King.
Would you have to say that that's a bit of dead naming right there? Where
yes, it's a bit of dead naming because Bob Turr has subsequently become transitioned and he's now Zoe Turr.
Yes,
but
and the parent of Katie Turr, who's on NBC.
Who's the marvelous antagonist, shall we say, brilliant reporter and antagonist of Trump.
Yes.
Anywho, Zoe found OJ on the freeway.
Can you believe that?
He's going, and all the news stations went live. This was the ultimate pursuit, right? I mean, there've been car pursuits and police chases before, but nothing quite like this. And it wasn't just that LA was watching, every channel in LA, the entire country was watching.
Entire world.
And it wasn't just, it was the entire world.
Yeah.
And then people came out and they were lining the freeways. I don't think, an election is one thing because that's scheduled. And in terms of just spontaneous events, I don't think in my life, I don't think I've ever seen
Where were
anything like it. I was in the office.
Here?
Yes. Yeah.
These offices?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
you were in different offices.
I mean, no, we're in crossroads of the world.
Yeah.
We're literally 200 yards away.
And what time was it? It was the afternoon, right?
Well, see, it was in New York. It was at nighttime.
Yeah.
And I was at the tunnel, and they brought. Listen, Peter Gation brought a TV onto the dance floor. They turned the music
That's so
off,
good.
and the entire
Fabulous.
club gathered around this little TV. Like 1,500 people sat and watched it. Just could not believe it. The whole club stopped.
I was working in a little sound stage in Burbank on a low budget show called Dead at 21 for MTV. And it was low budget, which means we had no time or any to stop and do anything. We were shooting. And part of the premise of the show is the lead character had crazy dreams. And so we were recreating these crazy, and everybody was like shooting. The same thing. TV was just on the whole time. And so you're like shooting and acting like you couldn't, it was overload. You couldn't believe it was happening. And,
I remember what I was wearing.
What were you wearing?
I was wearing a Galliano, black, one sort of shift with like a mesh thing, and I had Freeze's jewelry on, and I had an orange mohawk. I will remember it like it was yesterday.
That's the best story I've ever heard. Remember, and we thought he was driving, and then we thought he was killing himself, and people about his CIA anyway.
And being who we are, we immediately made a fast turnaround documentary for the BBC called OJ Murder, Media and Mayhem, which featured Camille Paglia and Zoe Turr, then Bob doing
the old
all these
waxworks that you would drag out for every.
Thank you, James. We're going to post it on the Wow Report.
Randy and Fenton, building World of Wonder brick by brick.
Okay, we've got to take a quick break. When we come back, we will reveal the number one event. I don't think it's too hard, frankly, to guess what it is. I will just tell you, though, OJ was granted parole on July 20th, 2017.
For a whole other crime he committed.
Right, and he resides now in Las Vegas, Nevada. And you can relive the iconic Bronco chase on the Emmy Award-winning show American Crime Story, Season 1, streaming on Netflix, James. Netflix. Okay, so, and get your WoW goodies here at WoW headquarters on Hollywood Boulevard. It's a really lovely store right next to RuPaul's Star, right outside our window here. Okay. We'll be right back. Where were you when?
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the special Where Were You When edition of the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James. And
I love you figured out what to call it in the last segment.
I've been fucking
Wherever
up
you
all
went,
the way
special
through.
edition of the
When
Wow
we're
Report.
at word salad all the way.
Yeah, if you tuned into an episode of the Wow Report, just stay to the end, because by the end we'll figure out what we're
And
talking
we'll
about.
figure out which to get the number right? Because we've gone from
We
10.
usually do pretty good at this segment.
We got to number 1 of our Where Were You When special. Okay.
Number 1.
What's number 1?
What is number 1?
September 11th, 2001.
I mean,
9/11.
it can only be,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Where
I
were
mean,
you?
I'll start. I was in England, and it's the strangest thing because I was at Channel 4 TV in UK, and we had been pitching for a long time a series, and this was the first. It was like the green light meeting. It was the kickoff meeting. It was the first meeting. We were in production. We were literally just starting, and this was a series of all things about air crashes. It was called Air Crash.
You were pitching a show about
We were having
crashes.
it was the first day of production of a series about air crashes, and we were in Channel 4 in the meeting.
You're cursed. I don't want to be anywhere near you. You're cursed.
Someone rushes in, and only this could happen in Britain. Someone rushes in and says, "Oh my God, the World Trade Center's been hit by a plane." And the commissioning editor was a very stoic man, so slightly sort of Ichabod Crane-like, slightly forbidding person. So, carried on with the meeting, and it was also Channel 4's offices were open plan and all glass, so I was like sitting in this glass cubicle, and seeing people begin to sort of run around looking you could just sense hubbub, but the meeting carried on. A few minutes later, another person going, "Oh my God!" and another plane's hit the World Trade Center. I swear to you, had to go through the entire meeting, and it was only when the meeting was over could I rush out and find out what the fuck is going on.
He wouldn't stop?
Did not stop.
I
Marvelous
appreciate
man.
that, considering how many people don't pay attention when we pitch.
Exactly. But I walked outside, and everyone was in the streets. It was like, this is London. I mean, London wasn't under attack, but everybody was just leaving work and in the streets. And I just remember getting quite drunk that night because I was supposed to come back to New York the next day. All the planes,
Sure.
I was trapped in. I was there for another week, and it was a horrible experience actually because you just felt so torn asunder, discombobulated, disconnected, and you were just waiting. I was just waiting for the planes to go back in the air so I could go back to New York. And I went back to New York, and Lauren Zalaznik, who was the commissioning editor of VH1, said, "Come with me, let's go down there." And we went down there, and it's an impossible thing to describe, but I'm so glad I went, it was just unbelievably overwhelming. And the one thing I remember, I suppose, really is just the smell. It was this sort of acrid, horrible smell, and it was the most silent place you've ever in New York, which is always, it was just ghostly silent. So that's my
James,
story.
what were you wearing?
I was in between apartments, and I had to camp out on my mother's floor for about 3 weeks.
And what part of where?
She was here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And so I was sleeping on a floor, and I got a phone call from my brother who was in Michigan, who said that a plane has crashed in. And I went and woke up my mom, and I just remember we watched it, and just that feeling of, this is my home. I was still in New York. I mean, we're all still New Yorkers on September 11th. And it was really just life-changing. And I remember my dad was in an airport in Detroit when it happened, and they couldn't, they grounded all the planes. They couldn't they couldn't rent a car, they couldn't rent a hotel room. Everything was completely booked up. My uncle lived sort of nearby, and they loaned him a car that he was able to drive from Denver back to Florida. But
I always remember incredible crises like that. And oftentimes I've learned to separate from world crises because you just have to, horrible story. But this one just felt personal to everyone.
Yeah.
And I was woken up. My friend Greg called me and said, turn on the television, which is just so, turn it on. There's one tower is done. And I remember I was kind of newly sober at the time. And all I could think of was, thank God I'm sober and I'm not seeing this after being up all night. or coming down or something, just like thank God, like, because it was so much. And then everything kind of just.
But you were afraid that LA was next. You were afraid
that.
Yeah, you thought that it was going to.
The mind couldn't help but wander. Yeah. But I didn't go into like it's sort of that slow kind of life-saving.
The world has changed.
Like, okay, might there be I live next to the Sunset Strip. That seems like a good place to bomb.
I remember the Academy Awards that year. I thought for sure that there was. And also I remember because they grounded all the planes and you would hear the military planes flying over and you got nervous every time you heard a plane fly over.
And I believe my friends Carolyn and my friend Laura and I met for lunch, and not in some like, let's meet for lunch and be kitschy. It's just like, don't want to be alone. Yeah. Let's get together. Let's sit and break some bread and just an empty city. Everything felt empty. It was just surreal. And those images and all of that.
Yeah. I'd say it was I managed to get on one of the first planes leaving London to go to New York, and the atmosphere on that plane was sort of extraordinary because everybody was
tense, silent.
Everybody was incredibly tense and completely silent and looking at each other, frankly, with
like, who
suspicion.
Are you?
Yeah. I do remember too that terrifying. When Saturday Night Live went on that week, and there was the Giuliani joke. Remember, they were saying, is it okay to be funny again? And Giuliani said, "Since when have you been funny?" Or something like, why start now? Or something like that. And
back when Giuliani was palatable. Yes.
Yeah, but I remember thinking like, will we be able to laugh after this? Will we be able to have reality TV after this? Because we didn't want reality. It was like sort of like it was like the world had changed and we didn't know how it was going to change.
And there's a musical Come From Away. I think we've talked about all the planes that landed in Canada, which if it's touring near, you should see it because it brought, I've seen it twice now, but when I first saw it, it brought back all this like suppressed kind of pain memory, again, being far away and not being affected by it, of how scary that moment was, but also how it brought out the best in people. Always look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers says.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for this week.
When we thought of the show, I thought it'd be a lot more upbeat. But you know what? We're showing our softer sides. It's hard not to look back with some
I think it's sadness. It's fitting and appropriate to end with that one. And sorry, it's a sad note to end on. But these are times that bring us together. And they are these extraordinary moments of you. I think, we're all living in such an alienated, atomized screen society that when something like this happens, we feel a connection. And it's kind of amazing in its own way. Thanks for tuning in to the Wow Report on Radio Andy SiriusXM. Listen anytime on the Sirius Radio app or watch anytime on the Wow Report. See you same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go wow.